Welcome to the Merick Ulrik podcast. This is episode 9, where I interview Evan Gow, the founder of StoryOrigins. Check it out. It's a great writer's resource. There's a lot to say. Welcome to the Merick Ulrik podcast. This is episode 9. And I have guest with me, Evan Gow, the founder of StoryOrigins. So if you don't know what StoryOrigins is, you're going to find out today. So just hang on, and we're going to get started right now. So welcome, Evan. Thanks for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I have been using StoryOrigins for at least 2 years. I'm not sure, maybe more, and I really love it. And just real briefly, I want to tell you why I use StoryOrigins. And so if anybody who's listening, maybe who just is a reader of some of my books, and this may be, looking behind the curtain from The Wizard of Oz a little bit, but as a indie author, what happens is you write a book that you love or you hope people will love, and you may even love it, and people may even love it, but what you soon realize is that no one knows about it, and they're not looking for it. So a lot of times you have a great story to tell, but you want it to get out to the world. How do you get the story out to the world? Well, there's lots of ways people think you can do it, maybe on social media and things like that. But what I found was, surprisingly, when I got into writing, was that good old email, just sending emails to your readers and staying in touch with people, building friendships and relationships with people all over the world through an email letter, a newsletter, is how it's actually way more effective a lot of times than posting a Facebook post that may or may not get seen, or paying a lot of money for a Facebook ad who may not get to the right people. So one beautiful thing about StoryOrigins is it's kind of a connector. You kind of be able to connect with more readers who hopefully are reading the same kind of books that you are writing, and they want to know about your book. So you can find fantasy readers in StoryOrigins from other authors who write fantasy or science fiction or romance or adventure, mystery, all kinds of things. So I found it to be very, very helpful. And for indie authors, if you're an indie author out there and you don't have a list, and you don't even know what that is maybe, or you don't know how to build your list or connect with your readers, StoryOrigins is an awesome tool. And I think it's one of the best out there because I've done BookFunnel. I still use BookFunnel. It's got some good group promos. I used to use BookClicker, and I just found it was so archaic. And compared to StoryOrigins, I was like, yes, this is what I need, because I can keep track of everything in my calendar. In some of the functions they have with StoryOrigins makes it very simple to use. So anyways, without further ado, Evan, thanks again for being on the show. How did you get started with StoryOrigins? Can you tell me a little bit about your background and what got you to create StoryOrigins?
Yeah, so I used to write short stories back in high school and always wanted to get into writing books. And at a certain point, so I worked for a few years, decided, now's the time to take the leap and start something. I wanted to get into writing and then also build tools for writers. And quickly, just the building tools for writers took over 100% of my time, so I did not have the chance to get into writing the way I really wanted to. And yeah, the way that started was I just went and I talked with a bunch of writers, like, how are you doing the things that you do? And I heard from authors like, okay, I use this service to build my mailing list. I use this other service to create universal book links. I use this other service to find reviewers. I use another service to arrange newsletter swaps with other authors. I use, some combination of Google Forms and Dropbox or whatever, or Google Docs and email to get feedback from beta readers. And I have a spreadsheet for tracking my word count, and I have the list goes on, right? Like, I'm like, okay, so you have like 5 different logins, you have like 8 different spreadsheets. This is a lot of context switching, and you always have to remember, okay, where am I supposed to go for what? And so I just wanted to simplify that process and create a one-stop shop where you could do all of those things. So StoryOrigin does reader magnets, review copies, universal book links, beta copies, audiobook promo code distribution, goal tracking, all of that stuff. And had I told you at the outset, hey, I'm going to go build this one thing that does it all, you probably would have said, Evan, I don't believe you. And that's the nicest way you would have put that. If not like, Evan, you are on something if you think that you can do all that. And do it in a way that is not only can do it all, but is also in a way that is like intuitive and easy to use. And so, here we are now. StoryOrigin does all that stuff. Oh, and website building. Yeah, you can build your website with StoryOrigin too. So it's like,
I think one of the best features that I think when I got to StoryOrigin that I like, I'm looking up here. So when I look up, I always look weird on the video, but when I look at StoryOrigins, the thing that really helped me a lot was, I want to say the calendar, because it's just really simple. I mean, honestly, well, I say calendar. If I go into StoryOrigin, then I go to my author, and then I go to newsletter swaps, not newsletter swaps, campaign planner, because it just lays it out for me. I know I send a lot of emails out because my mentor told me, he said, just send. Some people may mail their list once a month. Some people may do it every other month, every other week. I send about 3 to 4 emails a week out to my readers, and because my mentor told me, it's like the people who really like what you're doing and is real personal, they'll interact with you and they'll be happy, and the other people unsubscribe. And so I don't really want a lot of people on my list who don't want to be on there. But keeping track of all these different swaps and different promos and stuff on some of these other platforms was hard to remember. And I know I've heard other authors say that, well, we have a journal and you have to write everything down. And so you're looking through your journal. Oh, wait, it's Friday the 13th. I have 2 promo swaps with Book Clicker, and then I have Book Funnel, and I'm doing this. It's kind of... So, I mean, I will say I still use Book Funnel. I think it's good to have multiple platforms you're using to get to different readers and stuff, but mostly I use that for newsletter, for group promos, but I still use group promos with StoryOrigins. So when you first when did you first come up with StoryOrigins? How long ago was that?
StoryOrigin's public release was in April 2018. Oh, okay. So that's when it was first available, and the only feature that StoryOrigin had at that point was reader magnets, and then group promos was what followed very shortly thereafter.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that is probably one of the main features, but I'm glad you added more. I was going to ask you a few things because I don't know, like I'm going to burn through these things, but and I didn't mean to cut you off from all the things you were talking about, describing how you got started.
No.
One feature that I was curious about is the book collections. I wasn't really sure, what does that do? The book collections. That's kind of a new feature.
Yeah. So that book collections feature is great. A great way to list all of the books that you have available. So if you think of like an Amazon series page, it's kind of like an Amazon series page, but you can also put your reader magnet up there. So, a lot of authors, what they'll do is they'll write a prequel reader magnet to their series. That's like a, 0.5 kind of a deal, and then they have book 1, book 2, book 3 thereafter. So with that book collection, you can create a series page like that and have your links to those books on Amazon or whatever other retailers you have those books available at. But you can also put things like your reader magnets or your review copies, and you can do that. You can build those those book collections for audiobooks as well.
That's something I need to probably take advantage of, because I think so when I'm doing like a newsletter swap with somebody, will the book collection be in the swap, or will it just be like a book that's in the collection, and when they click on that book link, it'll show all the books in the collection, or it show a link to that? How's that work? I'm sorry, because it's something I've never used, and I was just curious.
Yeah. When you set up a newsletter swap, it is always for a one-to-one book-to-book sort of thing, or audiobook to book, or whatever. So an individual listing. Those book collections are more useful for if you want to set up like in your newsletter, when you're sending out your newsletters and promoting to your own audience, have a link to like all of the books that you have available for sale or whatever. You can also, when you're using StoryOrigin's website builder feature, which you can use in tandem even if you have a website built on already with like, WordPress or Squarespace or Wix or whatever else. You can still use StoryOrigin's website builder feature as well, and a lot of authors do, because it provides a really nice single landing page that just shows all of your books that you have available. And then it will use you can use those book collections to essentially have segments of your website where, you can have, here's my first series, here's my second series, my third series, whatever. And StoryOrigin groups that all nicely together. And it's a lot simpler for readers to navigate sort of that single landing page with all of your books sometimes than like a full-blown website that might have like blog posts and a bunch of other things that you might have there. And so a lot of authors will use that StoryOrigin website builder as the thing that they link to from like their Instagram bio or their Twitter bio.
That sounds really cool. I need to start. I want to start experimenting with that, because that's one feature that I haven't really used. Another thing I think is cool about BookFunnel, that I think is the universal book links in general, because like a lot of people may not realize this, but like if you're sending your books out to on a newsletter, you have people who might subscribe that might be from England, or they might be from Australia, or other countries, and if they're getting an Amazon link, I had readers early on messaging me, hey, I can't click on this because you're giving me Amazon.com, and then they're kind of disenfranchised because they can't click on that. So I think that's really cool. Yeah. And even the universal audio link too, because you have a lot of other well, I know that you have the US Audible link and you have the UK Audible link. Have you ever thought about doing maybe like the Australian Audible link too, and some of the German?
Yeah, adding the other sort of Audible storefronts is on the list of to-dos. So yeah, I mean, it's adding more options to both universal book links and universal audio book links are definitely on my.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to try to make you have more homework to do. It's like
no. I know, no. I like to talk about my to-do list, because my to-do list is like about several years long. It's, StoryOrigin is always, StoryOrigin will never be done per se. There's always improvements and features that I'm adding and working on stuff and trying to make things more intuitive for both authors and readers, and giving you guys
There's
more power.
A lot of stuff on StoryOrigin. So tell me, Evan, what's your background? How did you learn how to do all this stuff? What were you doing before StoryOrigins? I mean, you say you wanted to be a writer, and then you kind of got into it. You started asking everyone about that. Were you always a programmer, or just software? Or I guess this is not software. It's a what would you call this? It's a website, basically, that you get to interact with and use. But
yeah, I would call it like a web app. It's still software. Yeah, it's just, software you use through the internet. But yeah, before StoryOrigin, I majored in finance in college and then worked on Wall Street for a couple of years.
Wow, what a change. So different.
And then worked as an investor for a little bit as well. But my passion for programming and entrepreneurship, I got started in senior year of college, sort of after I'd already figured out, what I was going to do after I graduated. My senior year, I figured out I had this interest in programming. And so just started to learn in my free time from there how to build things. And then when I left my previous role, I spent about 3 months learning the specific tech stack that I wanted to build StoryOrigin with. And so, yeah, that was sort of all sort of I just learned everything and then just did it.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. It really is a wonderful tool. So like I say, compared to everything that I know that's on the marketplace, I haven't seen anything better than StoryOrigin as far as what it does. So it's been really great. I've been really enjoying using it. I recently started doing audiobooks, so it's kind of cool that you have the audiobook links. For a while there, I was like, didn't realize it was there, and I was trying to make universal book links to audiobook links, and I was like, wait a second, they already have something for that. And so I got that going. And yeah, it's a really, really cool tool. One of the things that we have, I don't know if I'm just bouncing around here, you have beta copies. There's one thing I would say here. I want to say I'm super positive on StoryOrigins, but I want to ask you a favor sometime. I don't know if you changed this or not, but the beta copies, the one gripe I have is when you send a beta copy book. Now, I don't know, maybe you changed this already. I don't know, because I haven't used it in a while. it seems to change all the formatting to just one big uniblock of words. So when the people are clicking on there, it just when I upload a book, it just maybe it's changed. But when I used it, the portion of a beta copy is so you can get feedback from your readers before you publish it, and they can say like, "Hey, I really like this part, or like this character or that character." But I don't know if that's changed. But when I got it and I was uploading those books, making a beta file, I don't know, maybe you changed that, but it seemed like it removed all the formatting, and so when the reader was getting it, they were getting like a monolith of like words with no breaks in it. And so a lot of my feedback was like, you need to format this. And I'm like, it's been formatted, it's just unformatted when I send it in the beta link. Have you...
It could be where you so it could be it depends on how you might have formatted it. So StoryOrigin, you originally, when you with the beta copies feature, you would just copy and paste in your text, and then you'd have to reformat it in there.
Maybe you fixed it.
Pretty shortly after I released that beta copies feature, I added the ability to upload a
then I'm
docx
sure it's
file,
fine
so that's
now,
a Word
because
doc.
I haven't used it since then because of that reason. So I'm sure it's fixed. Because that's why I was having to copy and paste, and when I did, it took all the formatting out, and I really just didn't have the time to take a novel and format a whole novel just for that.
Oh yeah, no. Yeah, pretty shortly thereafter, after I released that feature, I added the ability to upload a docx file, and then StoryOrigin will automatically parse that docx file and try to retain all of the formatting that you've used. It's not always possible for StoryOrigin to retain all of the formatting you used, sometimes dependent upon whether or not you're using like some custom styling thing in Word that like StoryOrigin doesn't know how to parse.
Yeah, I use Atticus. I don't know if that would be a problem, but I use Atticus now.
No, I mean, you can export
To docx,
Atticus. You can export from Atticus to a docx, and then you can upload
Yeah, I'm
that
sorry.
to
It's like it's a
StoryOrigin.
weird thing. I'm not trying to like dog it, but I need to go back and probably start using beta copies again, because it's a great tool. So if you don't know, if you're a writer or a new writer, like again, a beta copy is just something. Once you can find some beta readers, they're super helpful because they can tell you like, hey, I like this character, or hey, I really got lost here. Or, you got a plot hole here. By the way, didn't Judy get killed last week and now she's back? I don't know, just different things.
Yeah.
So, but there's so much stuff actually on StoryOrigins that take you a little bit of while to get used to figuring out what to do and everything with everything.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff, and on the beta copies feature in particular, that was one that I built because. Before StoryOrigin, what a lot of the process that I heard from a lot of authors was like, well, I'll send like an entire Word doc to a reader, and then I just send that out to all of my readers, and like if I don't hear back, then I don't know like whether or not they enjoyed the story, or I send them the whole Word doc and they're like, it was great, I loved it, and you as the author are like, okay, but can you give me? I need a little bit more than that, right? And so then authors, what they started doing was like, okay, I'm gonna send you the first 5 chapters, then you fill out this Google form, and after you fill out the Google form, then I'll send you another 5 chapters so that they could get more detailed feedback from their readers. But then it becomes a huge headache of like, okay, who has what section? Who's read how much? Like it becomes a whole process within itself to manage. And so that beta copies feature on StoryOrigin, what it does is you upload your book to StoryOrigin. StoryOrigin will then take the chunks out of that Word doc and split into the chapters, and readers have to leave feedback on each chapter to unlock the next chapter. So in order for them to read chapter 2, they have to leave feedback on chapter 1. And you as the author can also provide some critique guidance to them, like, hey, what did you think about the interactions between these 2 characters? Or like, were there any scenes that you thought were boring? And then between chapters, you can also add questionnaires if you want sort of more overarching feedback. So like after chapter 5, I'm going to have a little questionnaire there, and I'm going to ask you to answer like some questions about the first 5 chapters as a whole, and so that you can really get much more fine-grained feedback from readers, and you as the author also know exactly how far every single reader has gotten into the book, because you know what chapter was the last one that they answered.
Yeah, I think that's
on.
a great tool. I need to start taking advantage of that. I stopped using that, and for whatever reason, and maybe I was wrong. So I need to get back to that because it's very helpful. Like when you're, it's kind of part of the editing process. You can actually get better. It's like better intelligence on your book. So a lot of times, we writers, we fool ourselves because we go through stuff so fast, and maybe we didn't get a part out. Maybe there's something that's missing. Maybe this character is not likable, and you need to fix something. So it's pretty.
Yeah, or you just think something and you thought that you made that clear on the page,
right?
But like, yeah, like you left up too much to the reader for them to intuit or something. That happens a lot as well.
True. Absolutely true. So another good feature I think is just reader magnets, and I definitely have used that a lot with StoryOrigin. I'm really excited to see StoryOrigins grow because in my thinking is that the bigger StoryOrigin gets, it's better for all the authors combined because that means that the bigger pool of readers that are on there, they're bringing different readers in from other places. We can share our books with other people. So it's been really great. I've really enjoyed that feature. What else? I'm kind of like,
if readers, if you were mentioning earlier that authors, there's a lot to do with StoryOrigin, and so frequently, authors are kind of wondering like, okay, where do I get? Should I start with this beta copies feature? Should I start with reader magnets, or where should I start? Because there's it's sort of a one-stop shop for doing all this stuff. I generally recommend to authors to start with that reader magnet feature and get started with building your mailing list. To go back to your point from earlier, you were talking about how having a mailing list is so important, right? And having that direct connection with your readers is so valuable. And once you start building that mailing list, that then empowers you to do so many other things, right? Like the beta readers that you have. Did those come from your mailing list?
Yes, absolutely. A few of them did. You have these kind souls that they're like, hey, I like your books and I'd love to give you some feedback or, about, I have a few readers like that who are like, hey, I've been editing books for years. I would love to, help you. And these kind people just seem to crop up from your communicating with your mailing list. And I made a decision with my readers just to be real personable, and even if I turn some people off, my thing is hopefully your people show up. The people who go, hey, they get used to you. They're fine, and you can't be worried about. Well, there's fine lines everybody has to get to, but being too personal. But it does. I feel like your people, they appreciate you being honest and being yourself and things like that. Now here's another thing, okay? So I get on Facebook sometimes and I talk with other authors and stuff, and I am shocked. I am really appalled. I'm just shocked that some readers don't have a mailing list. The writers don't have a mailing list, and maybe they just don't understand how powerful that is, and also how kind of important it is. Because say if you have a Facebook page and you're just promoting your books on your Facebook page. The only problem is that Facebook only allows you a certain amount of visibility to even if you might have so many followers, but only 15 or 20 are seeing your posts every day. And then if you're doing Facebook ads, and I have tried to do Facebook ads before, it is a lot of work to try to get the algorithm just right to get to the people that want to read your story, and then it can be very costly trying to figure that out. A mailing list is like one of those almost like no-brainers, because I'm working and writing on a budget. I'm just not a budget. I don't know budget. I'm just writing and getting to my readers and stuff, and my readership's growing, and I'm selling a few books. I'm doing okay, but the cost of a mailing list is so low compared to the cost of doing Facebook ads and things like that. So I don't understand sometimes why writers don't take advantage of that. So indie authors and things like that. And maybe the simplest thing is to break it down is that you need a dedicated email server like eWeber or MailerLite. I use MailerLite, but there's other ones. I don't know off the top of my head, but there's a bunch of different ones. MailChimp. And then now I think because of some of the laws they have, you need to have a professional email, because now your emails are not going to go out to people if you have a Gmail, if your Gmail email that you're using, if your author name at gmail.com, you're going to need and that's real simple. All you have to do is go to MailerLite or MailChimp, sign up for a little small package, and usually starting out pretty cheap. And then you might go to GoDaddy.com and get a domain name and get an email. I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, talking about with like building mailing lists, sort of the basics that you need. I do recommend sending from a custom domain rather than sending from an @Gmail address. There's still some email service providers. I think like MailChimp will still let you send emails from a Gmail address and stuff like that. And some other email service providers will still let you send from like a sort of more a personal email address rather than a custom domain / business like email address. But generally what I recommend to authors, and by the way, like, this is going to like blow over like 90% of people's heads, and they're going to be like, I remember hearing that thing like 3 days ago. What am I supposed to do? If you go to StoryOriginApp.com and then you hit the tutorials tab on StoryOrigin, you will find a article called 0 to 1,000 plus subscribers. And I have all of these steps listed in there. So for if anyone that forgets what I said later, just go to StoryOriginApp.com and hit that tutorials tab in the nav bar. But here's what you need is basically, register, buy a domain. That's like 10 to 12 bucks per year. I recommend Namecheap. But you can use other services like GoDaddy or whatever else you want to use as a registrar. But get that domain through Namecheap or whatever. And then you need to set up an email inbox provider. I use Google Workspace, but you can use, there are other, sort of inbox providers. I use Google Workspace so that I can use that Gmail interface that I know and love already. I don't need to figure out something new. And so you sign up for Google Workspace. That's, I think, like about $6 a month. And then you would sign up for an email service provider like MailerLite. I recommend MailerLite. They're pretty good and intuitive for most authors. And that's usually free for quite a while until you've got a decent number of subscribers.
Yeah, I think until you get 1,000, maybe. So like for your first 1,000.
Yeah, I think the current free tier is you can stay on the free plan up to 1,000 subscribers. And so MailerLite is where you would design and send your newsletters, okay? And then you would sign up for StoryOrigin as well, and that is where you can arrange those cross promos, like those newsletter swaps and group promos with other authors, where you would be promoting each other's books. And you can do that even if you're starting with 0 people on your mailing list. This is a question I get from a lot of new authors, like, I don't have anyone on my mailing list. Why would anyone accept doing a newsletter swap, or why would anyone accept me into a group promo? Because those authors also started out at 0, and they had someone else that said, you know what? I don't care that you've got 0 people on your mailing list. I will still accept doing a newsletter swap with you, or still accept you into a group promo, and I'll promote your reader magnet and help you build your mailing list because I had someone that helped me up and helped me get to, whatever, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000
There are
subscribers.
a lot of kind people out there. There really are, especially in the writer community.
Absolutely. And the other thing is, if you are sending newsletters regularly, once a month or twice a month, or as frequently as you do, which sounds more like maybe somewhere around 15 times a month or something, when you're sending out newsletters, there's really 2 parts to a newsletter that you want. One is where you want to build personal rapport with your audience. This is where you're sharing like, hey, here's what I was up to this week, here's this funny thing that happened, or like whatever, here's just like a thing that happened. It doesn't need to be funny or even particularly interesting, just a peek into your life as an author, because a lot of readers sort of put authors on a pedestal where they're like amazed by this talent, and they're like, what is it like in this person's life? And so they really want to know what your life is like. And so it might be as simple as like, I just, was walking my dog in the park. Here's a picture of me and my dog. Like, it doesn't need to be, anything special. And then the other part of the newsletter that I recommend is having deals for your readers, where they can, check out other free books that they might be interested in, or see, books that might be on sale, etc. So those are the 2 key parts of your newsletter. And you really need both. If you're just sending out a newsletter every week or every couple of weeks that says, I walked my dog in the park and like I'm still working on my next book, people are going to stop opening your emails because every email ends up being the same. And so having those other books for readers to check out provides them with a reason to open every email because they don't know what they might find in there that might be their next great read, right? And you as an author, you might be able to write, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 books a year or something. Even the most prolific authors, like they cap out at 12 books a year or
Brandon
something
Sanderson
like that, right? You cannot write as many books as someone can read in a year, right? Like you're not going to write 50 or 100 books in a year. And so readers, you're never going to be able to fully satiate any one reader's desire for the number of books that they want. And so having those other books to give them a reason to keep staying subscribed to your mailing list and checking out the things that you send their way, so that in the interim, you're providing value to them until you release your next book. And so setting up those newsletter swaps and group promos is extremely valuable. And here now I'm going to finally get back to my point earlier. Even if you have 0 subscribers on your mailing list, for the author that has 2,000 or 3,000 subscribers on their mailing list, they still need those books that they can share with their audience. That is going to get their audience to keep opening and clicking on their emails. So if you've got a great cover in your description, it's like the perfect sort of thing that their audience would like, they would still want to include that book in their newsletter, even if they're not getting anything from you necessarily.
Yeah, because if you think about it, say if you're only sharing with your newsletter, your email, your subscribers once a month or even like every other month, because maybe if you only share when you have a new release, that that's what, every 3 months or something like that. Or it depends on what you're doing. If you're doing short reads, you might have one every couple of weeks if you're doing really short stories, short reads. But readers forget about you. People just forget if you're not really constantly getting information. But also you want to just be like, with my readers, I have a kind of the first 30 days, my readers get a 30-day automation. Okay, guys, I'm sorry I told you all the truth. You're getting automated the first 30 days. But I share a lot about my life, and I have a lot of readers who respond and send me detailed responses, and it's great. And you get to know people that way. And I had some really interesting, it's crazy. I've had people like tell me, hey, I can't read your book today because my husband died. And I'm like, oh, my God, it's so sad. You know what I'm saying? Don't worry about reading my book today. Just take care of yourself. I mean, you don't know what's out there. There's some real interesting people that are real kind, all kinds of people you meet just from these newsletters. It's really fantastic. Anyways, that's a...
Yeah, I mean, newsletters provide you a much better avenue for connecting with people than social media, I feel personally.
Well, social media is kind of like so fast. You see a lot of things just scrolling by and everything like that. But when you have a newsletter that you're getting every week, you start kind of building a relationship with it. It's a little bit slower, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And people will also respond. It's just I think a better way. It's like a more long form is just a better way of connecting with people rather than just like, quick sentences like, oh, it looks great or whatever on a picture of something on social media or whatever, right? And just having that newsletter where you're sharing like about your life and it's a little bit more in depth than just a quick picture or something like that really brings people in. I mean, I run my own newsletter for StoryOrigin. I share about my life and stuff in there, and then I share, my newsletter is a little bit different. So because I build software, so usually my newsletter is centered around like what feature updates I'm making to StoryOrigin, and then I'll share like those personal updates of like, here's what I'm doing. And I think that has been probably the most impactful thing that I've done for StoryOrigin is writing and sending those newsletters. And I did that from the very get-go. And it has created more of a sense of community, I think, on StoryOrigin as well. And this is something that you can do with your readers too, is creating that sense of community too, where you might have, you might have some sort, you might share responses back from readers and be like, oh, someone told me the other day such and such thing, and like it draws your readers in because they feel like they can be a part of the conversation too. And
and getting readers
I feel like
reader
that's just
reviews too. I mean, that's such a simple feature, but the ARC builder is really great too, because and sometimes I share in my newsletter what other readers kind of tell you, their feedback and stuff and different things, or even just sometimes I'll ask questions about like, what are you reading right now, and people will send me all kinds of stuff. So it's just kind of feedback and different things like that. But yeah, it's a totally, I think it's the most viable way of building a readership, because you're relating with people, and I think it's like it's the most cost effective too, if you're thinking about it, because like authors are not, it's not a get rich quick situation being an independent author, and you can really connect with a lot of people on your newsletter list. So I'm very excited about it. So
yeah, and those people that you build relationships with, then when you say, hey, I've got a new book coming out, it's going to be coming out in 6 weeks or something, and I'm looking for people who might want to read an early copy so that they can write a review and publish it on day one that the book gets released. And then those people that you build a connection with through your newsletter are going to be much more likely to become reviewers for you than simply just posting a link to, StoryOrigin has like a review copies directory where when you put a review copy up on StoryOrigin, you can either choose to keep that just private and only people that you send the link to will find it, but you can also optionally choose to have it publicly posted in the directory on StoryOrigin. And so readers might find you through that directory on StoryOrigin and request a review copy from you there. But your best reviewers are always going to be the people who are actually familiar with your work and already know you from something else. And so if they've gotten a reader magnet from you because they joined your mailing list and they read your reader magnet, and you're saying, hey, if you want book one in the series because the reader magnet is a prequel or something, you can request book one for free here if you are intending to leave a review on it. And then that is a great way to just start organically building that review team. And, you can also automate that too, going back to talking about your 30-day like automation sequence, right? If you put that link for them to request a review copy or join your review team in that automation sequence, then you've put both your building your mailing list and building your review team on autopilot. And so you're just naturally sort of getting more reviews as you are also building your mailing list. Because I've talked to a lot of authors who are like, I've built my mailing list to 3,000 people, but I don't have a review team. And I'm like, well, if you had started an automation from day one that just said, hey, do you also want to join my review team? The whole time you built up to that 3,000, you would have gotten at least, probably 50 people who said, yeah, I want to join your review team. I got to tell
everybody this. Everything Evan is saying right now is 100% true. Okay? I actually have an ARC team. I haven't had a super new release coming up. Long story. I have 2 or 3. I ghostwrite for different authors too, so I have different pen names. But the ARC team really is important. That if you have if somebody's listening to this and they're a new writer, maybe they don't know what an ARC team is. It's Advanced Reader Copy Team. And so, like in the StoryOrigins app, not only can you have a universal book link for your reader to go click on your link and check out your book on Amazon or on iBooks or wherever, you can have an advanced reader copy, and basically they're signing up saying, hey, I agree to get this free book and leave an honest review. I mean, I'm gonna leave an honest review, not whether but they're what I have found too is what you're saying is true. Like I had some books posted on some other websites like Book Sprouts or whatever, and I think that's the name of it. And I feel like the readers that I get from the advanced reader copies that I get from my newsletter, the ones who are like the faithful and true guys who are always reviewing my books, they know my books, I get a better book. It's like they're not surprised at what they're getting what they get, and then they're there because they like it. So you're getting a better review. And I think it's not, what it comes down to is if somebody was to order a Dr. Pepper at a a restaurant and then they got a glass of milk, they'd be like, "This is the worst. I hate it. This is terrible." And I think that's a wrong problem.
Yeah.
Is if you find people who are reviewing your books who are getting something else than they thought they were getting, and that could just be the randomness of it. Sometimes you get people who might clicked on a link and they gave a chance, but it wasn't really their cup of tea. So finding your people is so important, and I think that advanced reader copy team is really good. You'll find those people, and like you say, the automation sequence. So if you're a reader here, hope I'm not boring you too much, but behind the curtain, but basically, just by letting people know when they sign up to your list, hey, if you'd like to get my books 2 weeks in advance before they're released on Amazon or before they're released on whatever, or a month before, depending on how you release book, click on this thing and we'll send you a free book in exchange for an honest review. And Amazon lets you do that as long as you're not trying to bribe them or pay them, or they have to give an honest review. So.
Yeah. In the thing that's a little bit different with StoryOrigin's review copies feature than other sort of reviewer platforms. So there are other platforms where you can post a book up and people would say, they'll get the book for free and they'll leave a review. The thing that's a little bit different with StoryOrigin is readers actually apply to get a copy. And then you as the author are in the driver's seat. And this is pretty unique to StoryOrigin. So when a reader applies for a copy, they say where they would be intending to leave a review. So Amazon, Goodreads, BookBub, etc. And then if they say that they're going to leave a review in one of those places, they would also leave the link to their reviewer profile. So if they say they're going to leave a review on Amazon, they would leave the link to their reviewer profile from Amazon. And then you as the author can look at the reviewer profile, and if you see, hey, this person has reviewed like a lot of like cozy romance novels, right? And the book that they just requested from me is like a high heat, steamy romance novel. You might say, okay, I'm not actually going to give this person a free copy of this book because they're going to get it thinking that it's something else. And then they're going to feel, they're never required to leave a review. That would be against terms of service. But they will feel like, hey, I should leave a review because, like, I got the book for free. And they're probably not going to leave a super great review because it's not what they wanted and it's not what they were expecting. And so for you as the author to be able to sort of anticipate that situation by looking at the reviewer profiles and saying, oh, this person's like reads in a totally separate genre from what I write, and I think they might be mistaken about what they're thinking they're going to be getting with this book. Let me pass on this person and make sure that I'm getting the right people on my review team, not just
absolutely.
anybody.
And another feature, I'm just going on here, but that I like about StoryOrigins is when you're doing a newsletter swap with somebody, it's kind of similar to that. When you're doing a newsletter swap, you can see after they send your book, you can see how many people have clicked on your book, and so you can actually see and if there's 0, you might go, hey, did you really share it? Because you didn't even click on it to check the link to see if that, you know what I mean? That's one of those things that, you're still going to have some people who might forget to send a book or something like that, but giving people the benefit of the doubt, but you can also communicate with them and stuff. So it's very easy to use StoryOrigins, actually, in my opinion. Maybe I've been biased because I've been using it for 2 years, but it's very intuitive. Everything seems like it works pretty simply. You can find things.
Well, I am both the engineering department and the customer support. So when authors run into trouble and they say, hey, Evan, how do I do this thing? If I get enough emails like that, I'm like, I'm going to go change this thing, make it easier to use. So I stopped getting as many emails about asking me how to do the thing. So and of course I'm biased. I think it's intuitive. If your brain works like my brain and is organized like my brain is, then you'll find it intuitive. And also it's, been battle tested by thousands of authors using it too, right? So I've always been working on, minor improvements here and there to sort of make things easier to use. But to go back to your point about like the newsletter swaps feature, there's that ability to, before in the wild west days of newsletter swaps before StoryOrigin, most authors arranged newsletter swaps through Facebook groups.
Right.
Right. And there was no real
Yeah.
accountability there. There's no real visibility into like the author reputations as a whole, right? If John and Jane arranged a newsletter swap and John didn't fulfill his side of the bargain or whatever and didn't promote Jane's books, you would not have any idea, right? And so you might arrange a newsletter swap with John as well, and then they're just sort of continually doing this to everyone in the community, and no one really knows that. Versus with StoryOrigin, when you arrange newsletter swaps with other authors, you can click on their newsletter info on StoryOrigin and go to the past campaigns tab and see how many clicks they've sent to past group promos or past newsletter swaps that they've arranged on StoryOrigin. You can see before you agree to a swap with them or before you request a swap with them, hey, is this person actually going to send clicks to my book? And the other thing that you can do is authors can also optionally add, after they've sent out their newsletter, they can add their archive link to their newsletter on StoryOrigin. So if you sent your newsletter out through MailChimp or MailerLite or whatever, these platforms, these email service providers, they'll give you a link to where you can view that email in your browser after you've sent that newsletter out. So that if you want to share that newsletter with someone else that, they weren't on your mailing list when you sent it out or whatever, right? You can send the link where they can view that newsletter in the browser. And so you can post that on StoryOrigin. And so when you're arranging newsletter swaps or group promos with other authors, you can click and see, okay, have they added their archive links? And what do their newsletters typically look like? And if you go to that archive link and you see, okay, they've put, 100 books into their newsletter, and like, I'm, one of 100, like, that's not going to be very good in terms of like whether or not that's going to do anything for my books or whatever, right?
I will say this. I have a newsletter I send out. It's called Free Book Sunday. On Sundays, I always send like reader magnets out to people. And that gets a lot of clicks. And I put a lot of free books in there. I might put like 30 free books at a time sometimes. On maybe 20, something like that. And I get the most click through on those. So every book is getting like a lot of exposure, even though I have a lot of books in there because they know they're getting free books on Sundays. So just
right, yeah. It depends, right? Like it can depend a lot upon how that email is structured, whether or not those books get visibility, because it's sort of like a group promo. So for those who aren't, maybe we should take a step back also for authors who are not familiar. So a newsletter swap is a one-to-one cross promotion, where I say I'll promote one of your books in one of my upcoming newsletters if you promote one of my books in one of your upcoming newsletters. A group promo is where you, me, and let's say 20 other authors will all list our books on a single landing page, and then we'll all drive traffic to that single landing page. And so with that, if you arrange a lot of newsletter swaps with a lot of other authors into a single newsletter, it's almost like someone is getting a group promo in their email inbox instead of having to click a link and then go to a landing page and then see all of those books. So it's not necessarily like an incorrect thing to do or doesn't mean that people will get visibility. It depends a lot upon how you structure your newsletter. Is it like actually easy to digest and see all of those books? Because if you're putting 100 books in a newsletter and it's, a giant book cover image for every single one and your email is a mile long, that's not going to work for the people who are, at the bottom of that list, because at some point, Gmail cuts off the email and says, this email is too long. Do you want to see the rest of the email or not? So it depends a lot on the structure, but also just sending out those newsletters where you are promoting, hey, here are free books. Readers love those emails. It's one of the reasons that like a reader will stay subscribed to your mailing list.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Well, guys, if you haven't checked out StoryOrigins and you're a writer, definitely go check out StoryOrigins. It's StoryOriginsApp.com, and there'll be links in the description of this podcast, so definitely check that out. So, Evan, what kind of writing do you like to do, man? So you started as you doing some writing. Any writing plans in the future? You want to get back to it, or you?
I used to write like science fiction fantasy kind of stuff in high school, like short stories about that. Nowadays, like the genre that I consume the most of would be lit RPG. Okay. And so if I got into writing, it would be almost certainly something lit RPG. So yeah, I always keep like a list of like little ideas that I've had. But if and when I get around to writing will probably be quite a while from now. That's my to-do list for Story Origin is several years long, and I enjoy writing software.
That's really cool.
Like I have fun with it. So
I started writing fantasy, and when I do write fantasy and I do some science fiction, I have tried to write one lit RPG. I don't know if the genre is a really distinct genre. It's kind of different. Yeah. It's kind of for gamers in a lot of ways, but it's kind of in a little popular kind of niche, actually, the lit RPG.
I actually don't play video games at all. They give me anxiety because I feel like I ought to be doing something else with my time.
Yeah, that's so weird. It's like I do when I'm not productive. I feel like I get like just so anxious sometimes. If I'm not writing, I could be doing a podcast. I could be doing, cleaning the house, doing different things. But if I'm not writing, that's when I feel like I have anxiety. Like if I haven't written anything today, I'm like, I haven't done anything today. I haven't done anything.
Right.
I think writing it depends on what you want to do. It's all about what you want to do, man. But writing is therapeutic for some people. It's a form of art, I think. And then also, I have in the time past tried to write to market a little bit, like maybe with a reader with a lit RPG. I think my lit RPG didn't take off too well, so I kind of lost interest in it a little bit. But but I use it as one of my reader magnets. It's called Ultimate Fantasy, and I was kind of like themed upon the idea of like if somebody got stuck in a Final Fantasy game, but it's I don't know.
I mean, lit RPG is I mean, it has sort of spawned another genre, which is progression fantasy. The thing that I, as a reader, really enjoy about the genre is I love like the concrete sort of progression of the characters, right? Whereas in like a lot of fantasy, like magical worlds, it's just like this person is super strong, and like there's not really any logic to it.
Yeah, and there's no cost really, if he's just like, I guess the cost value. I don't know if it's the cost. There's no, what do you call it? Not cost. It's no, what do you call that? Not cost. There's no consequences. You don't feel like he's already super strong. Well, golly, what else is going to get? When I first started writing, I was wanting to write like dark fantasy and kind of like I really like Joe Abercrombie. I found Joe Abercrombie and I was like, oh, I love Joe Abercrombie. He writes this like really gritty, grim, dark kind of fantasy and stuff. And so I had an idea for a story, but I was like, wasn't sure if I could write it. So I wrote a prequel to the story, and it's called Brothers of Chaos. But since it was a prequel, I did it when the characters were younger. It was based on a friendship between the Zan Kadin and Vandarin. And so anyways, when I wrote this book, I wasn't wanting to write young adult or YA, okay? But I'm writing a story about these their childhood and teens, basically when they first met and then they go their own way. It was kind of like to paint a backdrop of why these guys were friends and how did they know each other. So, but my problem is that I feel like if some people look at that book and they expect YA, especially when they get to book 2 and 3 and 4, they're going to be like, this isn't YA, because it's not anything graphically bad or anything. It's just like it's a little darker, a little bit grittier, everything like that. And so it's funny how, finding your people, it's so interesting how you have people who read young adult. Some people read grim dark. So I really love that book, The Blade itself, and the whole First Law series by Joe Abercrombie. Have you ever read that?
No, I haven't.
Do you listen to audiobooks? I do too sometimes. At Audible, you can listen to it, and it was narrated very well too. I liked it on Audible. But what I liked about that book is the characters are so vivid, and he repeats himself sometimes with some lines of dialogue. The dialogue is really good too, and they have but I do like characters that show progression, like you're saying, like concrete progression. Like
Yeah.
I don't like a character that's super strong all throughout the whole thing and has no weaknesses, no, you know what I'm saying, has nothing to overcome or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It goes back to like my desire to just like be productive all the time, I think. Like my like anxiety with video games is like they're like I feel like I'm accomplishing something because they give you that sense of like
Dopamine
accomplishment
rush,
and
or
you're reaching goals and all that stuff. But then I know that like in terms of the real world, like I haven't actually done anything, and so so like for me, a lot of times, like you were saying, like I'll listen to audiobooks. And I can be doing the dishes or like, you know, folding the laundry or whatever. I can do some chores at the same time that I can listen to an audiobook where I can like sort of derive that sense of like accomplishment where like the character is like leveling and progressing and, you know, building an empire or settlement or something like that, or just like, you know, getting stronger or things like that. And so that gives me that like sort of false sense of accomplishment, but at the same time also am actually accomplishing things by like doing the dishes.
It's kind of like when I was a teenager and I would play Final Fantasy over and over, or Final Fantasy 12, Final Fantasy whatever, 7 or whatever, and then when I'd finally beat it and it would be like the climax, then I'd be like, I just wasted 50, 100 hours of my life and the game's over. But I've gotten into Tetris lately. Tetris has become kind of an obsession for me. I don't know why. It's just very... I mean, I only play it like maybe 30 or 45 minutes a day, but my daughter gets mad at me when I do, and I get on her Switch. She's like, Dad, you're addicted to Tetris. But it is a weird addiction, I always say. It's you know, I don't know if I have an addictive personality, but the game is just, it's so hard. When I'm playing, it's like, I forget, it's Tetris 99 or 98, I can't remember what it's called. You play against 100 different players at the same time, so you're always trying to get to number one. I think I got to 17th place once. So, like, but you're playing against 100 people live at the same time, and then you can kind of, like, you can kind of mess them up. You can attack them when every time you get so many Tetrises, you can attack them and make their screen go full of, like, trash at the bottom. So it's a very fun game. Yeah, and you can kind of you get tickets and points and stuff like. Anyways, that's some weird stuff about what I'm.
I like that sort of mini game stuff more than I do because those mini games I can do it for a short amount of time and then I can be out and doing something else, versus like when it feels like I have to invest my entire life into a video game. Like I played World of Warcraft for a month and then I was like, I can't do this. But playing those mini games is a lot of fun.
The other thing that I do is let's see here. I have one of these here. Hold a second. I play BattleTech, and it's really hard to find players for BattleTech in my small town. I like the tabletop game. You throw the dice and everything. It's a strategy game, and
like Warhammer 40K,
but more intelligent. That game's for slow people who like really simple, basic rules. I'm gonna make a lot of enemies right now.
yeah.
But that's probably one of the.
You just decide to wake up and be violent today, huh?
The Warhammer. That's fine if you like that. That's cool. But the thing about BattleTech is it has kind of a hard rule system, so you have strategy sheets and things like that. It's a strategy game, but it's hex based and it's got a lot of rules. But once you get them down, it's great. A lot of rules. Anyways, man, so thanks so much for coming on the show today, and I love Story Origins. Thank you for making Story Origins. It's a great tool, and it's a great way to find new readers and stay in touch with your readers. It's just it's very affordable too. I think it's like $10 or something like that, isn't it?
Yeah. So, for anyone that's interested in signing up, you can check out StoryOriginApp.com, and it is $10 a month or $100 a year, which will save you a couple months worth of payments if you want to subscribe on the yearly plan. And if you ever have any questions, you can hit that contact link in StoryOrigin. You will see my face, see my name. You can reach out to me personally. My inbox is always open. I'm always happy to just answer any questions people might have.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I hope I didn't talk too much. You made a lot of sense, even if I kind of was going everywhere. And, it's a great tool, and I hope to meet more readers through Story Origins and stay in touch with everyone. And also, I have been able to connect with other authors on Story Origins from doing newsletter swaps. I've had some authors on the show that I met through Story Origins, like Jay Tony, S.D. Houston, and I met Gregory Amato, and I have a few more that I think are coming on. And the common thing is that we've done swaps together on Story Origins, so when we've talked on the podcast, it's got to get a face to the name that we've already been sharing each other's books. So it's not a bad way to kind of network slightly. And that might be another idea. Maybe you can add a networking feature on Story Origins. I don't know. There's a million other features, so hey. All right. Well, thanks so much for being on the show, Evan. I really appreciate it, and we'll can't wait to see what comes next with Story Origins. It's going to be great.
Thanks again for having me on.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to take off here, and thank you so much. We'll see you next week. Take care. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week where I interview fantasy author Cleve Bourbon. It's going to be a great show. You don't want to miss it.